Hello and welcome to this lecture. Today's class will give us an opportunity to better understand singular perturbation problems. Now we have already encountered such a problem in fluid mechanics in the lecture on pulsatile flow, where there you see the main characteristic of singular problems is that one cannot obtain a single perturbation solution across the domain or all over the domain. Instead, you find that when you try to obtain perturbation solutions to the problem in the limit of the small parameter becoming small, you find that that perturbation solution cannot be valid everywhere. So in the case of pulsatile flow, when we took the limit of high frequency, we obtained a solution that clearly could only be valid in the core as it could not satisfy the no-slip condition at the boundary. This was the clue that basically gave us the indication that we need to look at a different problem close to the boundary and obtain another perturbation expansion that would allow us to describe the behavior of the flow near the wall, including how it satisfies the no-slip condition. So this led us to appropriately rescale the problem within the boundary layer near the wall. We then solved that corresponding perturbation problem to obtain another perturbation solution. So now we had two perturbation solutions or two asymptotic expansions in this small variable in different parts of the domain. Now, while the core part of the solution was determined immediately, the solution near the boundary was not completely determined because we had in that case two unknown constants. One was determined by the no-slip condition, but the other remains undetermined. And in fact, this is a key aspect of the problem, the fact that you can't completely solve the boundary layer equations by themselves, because that unknown constant is what gives us the flexibility to force the boundary layer solution to smoothly match with the other perturbation solution for the core. And indeed, by matching the two solutions, we are able to obtain the unknown constant in the boundary layer solution. Now, in the case of the pulsatile flow problem, this matching was almost trivial because we saw that basically one of the constants had to be zero, otherwise the solution would grow with distance from the wall. And by doing that, setting that to zero, we automatically obtained a boundary layer solution that matched with the core. So the process of matching, what's known as asymptotic matching or matched asymptotics, wasn't really apparent in that problem. So what we shall do today is to focus on that particular aspect of singular perturbation problems by using a mathematical example, which although doesn't have any real physical basis, does serve as a nice example to illustrate the method of matching in a context that's reasonably simple and easy to solve mathematically. But all the key ideas will come out from this problem. Okay, so let's first write down the problem that we will deal with today. So epsilon is our small parameter, and we are looking for the solution of the function f of x, where x goes from 0 to 1, and f satisfies the following differential equation. And the boundary conditions are f of 0 equals 0, and f at the other boundary 1 is 1. Okay, so this is our mathematical problem, and epsilon here is a small parameter. So now already from your previous experience, by simply seeing epsilon multiplying the highest order derivative in the problem, it's clear that this will be a singular perturbation problem, right? Because if we take epsilon to 0, the zeroth order problem is going to be only first order, and therefore there will be no way to satisfy both the boundary conditions. So clearly the solution that we get by simply setting epsilon to 0 in equation 1 is only valid in part of the domain, and then near the boundary that we cannot satisfy with that solution, we would have to do a boundary layer analysis. And then ultimately we have to match those solutions, which is the whole point of this problem. Okay, but for the moment, let's assume that we don't know that it's going to be a singular problem. So then what does one do? Well, typically you just proceed assuming that it is a regular perturbation problem, and you just assume an expansion for the solution of f. So let us say f is equal to f naught, which is a function of x but not of epsilon, because the dependence of epsilon, of course, is going to be expanded here, and we'll assume it to be a power series, and we let's say we stop at the first order. Of course, everything we do from here can be carried on to higher orders. Alright, so now if we substitute the expansion 2 in 1, right, we get at leading order simply the equation that we obtain when epsilon goes to 0. So we get dou f naught by dou x is equal to minus e to the power minus x, right, which means that our solution for f naught after doing one integration is minus e to the power minus x plus some constant which I'm going to call a naught, the subscript naught to indicate that it's a constant associated with the solution at 0th order. Okay, now similarly we can go to the next order. Alright, yeah, so before we proceed now, we could try to determine what this constant a naught is. But now arises the question of which boundary condition do we use to determine a naught? Well, this is equivalent to asking where should the boundary layer be. So in other words, by assuming a regular perturbation expansion, we immediately realize that the solution f naught cannot satisfy both boundary conditions, and we will see that even higher orders will do the same, because the problem will remain first order in x at every order in epsilon. So the issue becomes, alright, I know that I can satisfy only one boundary condition and there must be a boundary layer near the other boundary, but which boundary has the boundary layer? Is it the boundary at x equal to 0 or the boundary at x equal to 1? Now, without any other knowledge of this problem, and especially because it has no physical basis, it's not easy at this point to figure out where should we look to do a boundary layer analysis. So in such cases, we do the only thing we can do, which is to assume for now that there could be a boundary layer in either place, and do a boundary analysis on both places and hope that the analysis will show us which of the boundaries has a boundary layer and which does not. So for the moment, we won't try to determine this constant a naught because we don't yet know which boundary we should be able to satisfy by the solution in the core region, right, or the solution from this regular perturbation series. So let's leave a naught unspecified for now. And let's now go to this next order. Right, so at the next order, you see if you substitute there and take terms of order epsilon, you clearly have dou f1 by dou x plus, so there's already an epsilon multiplying the first term, so the only permissible term is dou square f naught by dou x squared is equal to 0. Yes, that makes sense. So now dou square f naught by dou x squared, of course, is e to the minus x, and then another derivative gives me a minus again, and what we get is dou f1 by dou x is equal to e to the minus x, and one integration gives me minus e to the minus x plus the new constant a1. Yes. Let me just double check my algebra. I had dou f naught by dou x minus e. Alright, so when I take an integration here, I should get plus here. Yes, so that means this sign changes over. You get minus and then plus. And so then I'm left with a minus here and a plus here. So you see the form of both solutions is same. You have e to the minus x plus a naught, and similarly at f1 you again get e to the minus x, but this time, so we call this constant a1. Alright, so what we have obtained right now is f, let me just call it outer, right? This is the solution obtained by assuming it to be regular perturbation, although we now know it's not. So we know that this solution can only be valid away from both boundaries. It's also valid near one of the boundaries, but we don't know which one yet. So it's e to the minus x plus a naught plus epsilon e to the minus x plus a1, and we have done this till order epsilon squared. Okay, so this was simple enough. Alright, so now we come to the treatment of the boundary layers. So let us first look at a possible boundary layer near x equal to 0. Right, and we should just put a question mark there because we are not yet sure whether there is one. So part of the problem is to try and figure out whether there actually is a boundary layer near x equal to 0. So now for this, well, what we need is we would like to stretch the coordinate near the boundary x equal to 0 such that we're able to bring in the role of the second order term, that was lost when we assumed a regular perturbation expansion. So now how does one rescale the variable x? Well, in this case, in the case of a physical problem, typically you will know if it's a boundary layer problem to rescale the length appropriately and then determine what that length scale is. Here we don't know what x is, it doesn't have a physical interpretation, but we do suspect that we need to stretch the coordinate x such that if epsilon becomes small, the region near the boundary is expanded out, because that's really the idea of a boundary layer, right? And because that's what will allow us to give, this viscous term an order 1 importance in the problem. So let us define a new variable x tilde, right, which equals to x times epsilon to some unknown power alpha. So we are guessing that the form of the transformation is going to be some power law and epsilon, motivated of course by our previous experience and this general idea of how these problems work out. So alpha was half in the case of a pulsatile problem, if you remember. Alright, so let's now just substitute this into the equation. So what this means is that x goes as x tilde by epsilon to the half. So you can see if alpha is a positive quantity, right, as epsilon becomes small, for any fixed value of x, if epsilon becomes small, then x tilde would become small if alpha is a positive number. If alpha is a negative number and epsilon becomes small, then for fixed x, x tilde becomes large. So that is what we want, and so we can already anticipate that alpha should be a negative quantity so that it can represent a stretching of the coordinate. So let's go ahead and substitute this transformation in equation 1. So what you will see, yes, so we get x is x tilde by alpha, so we'll get epsilon to the 2 alpha coming up in the numerator, right? To alpha into the previously existing epsilon, plus we have another epsilon to the alpha coming out here, minus e to the minus, and we have to also do the transformation here on the right hand side. So x tilde by epsilon to the alpha. Okay, so now we need to basically consider how to determine the value of alpha. So this comes out from basically figuring out which terms must be the leading order balance in this problem within the boundary layer. So there are two options. Clearly we want to retain the second order term so that we can retain that characteristic of the problem. But the question is, do we balance this term with the first order term or do we balance it with the right hand side? Now if you look at the form of the right hand side, because of the exponential form, this term involves all orders of epsilon, right? So it's not feasible to think that we can balance this term with the right hand side, because of its exponential character. So we decide as a starting guess to try and balance the second order term with the first order term. So by doing that, right, by balancing these two terms, what balancing means is that we expect at leading order that these two terms are going to basically determine the problem, which means that the powers of epsilon in front of them should be equal. So what this means is that 2 alpha plus 1 must be equal to alpha, which in turn implies that alpha equals minus 1. So we see that balance gives us a reasonable picture of alpha in the sense that it's a negative value, and one that implies a stretching of the coordinate close to the boundary x equal to 0. So let us now write out the transform problem in x to the, so basically x tilde now is x by epsilon, right, because alpha is minus 1, and the transform problem then becomes the following. Again, I encourage you to try out all the algebra by yourself, convincing yourself of each term before continuing with the video, because the best way to gain comfort with these problems is to actually work them out. Right. Okay, so this is our problem now, and we would now look for a perturbation solution to this problem. For that, we should first expand out this side in a power series, which for small epsilon is simply 1 minus epsilon x tilde plus order of epsilon square terms. So you can already see, I mean, that epsilon comes at all orders, but the leading order is 1. And if you had tried to balance this term with this, you would not have got a meaningful value for alpha. You can try that out and see where that leads you, and ultimately the problem should indicate that that balance was wrong. Alright, so we could do an expansion in 1 by epsilon, but let's just multiply by epsilon here. So that gives us the following equation now in the boundary layer. And we are neglecting higher order terms. Okay, so now we can assume a perturbation expansion. So instead of using the earlier variables f0, f1, because we are looking for a different solution here in the boundary layer, let me call the variables, the coefficient variables g0 now of x tilde plus g1 of x tilde epsilon, and we'll only stop at the first order in epsilon, since that's what we did also for the core solution. Okay, so now let's look at the various problems. So at order epsilon to the 0, by substituting this in the equation for the boundary layer, which we call 4, right, we obtain the following. Is equal to 0 basically. Alright, so now how do we solve this problem? It's quite a simple equation to solve. You can set y as dg0 by dx. Excuse my partial derivatives, it's just a habit. These are all, it's only a function of one variable, so they are actually all total derivatives. So y is dg0 by dx. I mean, we assume that, and then we can rewrite the equation as dy by dx tilde, sorry, x tilde plus y equals to 0. And the solution to this, of course, is some constant, which I will call b e to the power minus y, right? Because dy by dx equals minus y, e to the power minus x tilde. Right, this is the, and let me call it basically b naught for, because it's the zeroth order problem. So what this tells me is dg naught by dx is actually equal to b naught e to the power minus x tilde, and after a further integration I get minus b naught e to the minus x tilde plus c naught. Alright, so now I can determine one of these constants by application of the boundary condition associated with x equal to 0. Right, because I'm looking, this is really the boundary layer adjacent to that boundary. So by saying that g naught of 0 must be equal to 0, which follows from the condition that f of 0 is equal to 0. So at all orders, this would imply that at all orders g naught, g1 and so on will all be 0 at x equals to 0. So this just tells me, so I get 0 equals minus b naught plus c naught. So c naught is basically equal to b naught, and therefore I can get my solution as b naught into 1 minus e to the minus x. So as expected, we still have an unknown constant. That's because that's the constant we need to determine from matching with the core solution, if in fact this is actually a boundary layer. So far it does look to have those features, because if you see for small x, you have some functional relationship which is exponential, but as x increases, x tilde, yes, it's all x tilde. So as x tilde goes to infinity, which means this is of course a stretched coordinate, right? So as x goes from 0 to an order 1 quantity, x tilde will go from 0 to infinity, provided epsilon is small, based on our rescaling. And as x tilde goes to infinity, you see that we get a well-defined limit of b naught. So it already seems like it is the boundary layer must be near x equal to 0, as we are obtaining a solution that is consistent with that assumption. But let's proceed and see where this takes us.